That's what it is, because I was watching your TED Talk. You were saying how it's not a panacea. The people who go to college, black kids that go to college, don't always do better than white counterparts who drop out of high school. Could you expand on that part?
I think education has become a political ruse. I think notions around equal opportunity and framing inequality as an opportunity gap, that's rhetoric that distracts us from the resources themselves that lead to disparity. We think of education as an input, but two things. One is we exaggerate it as an input and its capacity to address racial inequality in particular. So there's no question that a black person with more education tends to have more income, more wealth, better health outcomes than a black person with less education. But if we look at education across race, not only do we find that disparity persists with education, it oftentimes gets worse. So a mortality statistic, we know that between the ages of 25 and 64, black people have a 50% higher mortality rate than white people. If we look at blacks and whites with a college degree, that statistic goes to 70%. So a black person with a college degree has a 70% higher mortality rate than a white person with a college degree. And you might ask why. One of the things I argue is that it is the stress, the stigma of trying to work so hard to overcome the everyday burdens that actually might manifest in some of these health disparities. So when somebody tells you to work twice as hard to get by, one question we rarely ask is, at what cost? What does it cost you to overachieve in a context of racism and other structural barriers that you face on every day? I think it manifests in your health. That's one mechanism. So, I went on a long rant, but
Excellent. In fact, you remind me, I remember when I was coming up, Doctor, my mom used to say, we got to work twice as hard to get half as far. And that's a way to inspire you and motivate you. But as you pointed out, not very healthy. Not very healthy to work twice as hard. There's also the conservative viewpoint of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the grit and determination will somehow put you in place where you need to be and somehow raise you and your children up. But that's not always the case. And the hardest working people I've ever known were poor people, low wage workers. They work harder than anybody else.
Yep.
Working on their roof, getting another roof. Each time they finish the roof, they just get another roof.
Yeah. But it's such a compelling narrative, isn't it? That, you're the captain of your fate. Just work hard. You can, stop making excuses. Get up, boy. Go out and get a job. Pull your pants up. Hold your head up high. That's a compelling narrative because it tells you that you can actually do something to change your circumstance. And if I have a child, I'm going to tell my child, get up and go to work and work hard. If I'm perhaps a preacher in a sermon, I might say that as well to try to motivate somebody. But if I'm a policymaker, I can't tell you to work twice as hard to get by. It's my job to facilitate environments so that you can get the proper return, just like anybody else, from your efforts, and to make sure that you have adequate resources so that you can achieve your desired goals. That has to be my job, not to motivate you to work twice as hard. That's the difference. And, again, I'm not saying education is bad. I'm a university professor. I'd be a hypocrite to encourage people to go to college if I thought it was not a hypocrite. I'd be an exploiter if I encourage you to go to college and I don't think there's a return to it. But there's intrinsic value in education. It in and of itself is worth investing in. There's power and joy in being able to understand and synthesize information into big ideas. That's reason enough. But things like, medical care, health care, everybody should have access to medical care in the 21st century. We should have Medicare for all. We should not be rationing health care based on for-profit motives. And when you're most vulnerable, when you're sick, finance should not be the thing on your mind. The stigma and burden of finance should not be at issue when you're going to see a doctor because you're sick. And we can do this in our society. We have provisions to make sure that's true, that occurs. I know I'm talking a lot. Last thing I'll say is that education being a political ruse, me saying that, we exaggerate the functional role of education to the detriment of understanding the functional roles of wealth itself and power. It ain't just wealth, it's also political power and power in general. That thinking that all you need is education to get those things, that becomes distraction, because you also need resources and power. In fact, if you got wealth, you can buy education. We have literally seen that take place with some of the scandals that are going on. Obviously, we don't want that to occur, but that's what we need to know. We need to shift the onus of inequality from individuals onto where it properly belongs, and that is the public, as a result of resource deprivation historically, as well as not providing the provisions of what people need in terms of enabling goods so that they can achieve and be successful. Beyond political and civil rights, we need economic rights. If you want to vote, you shouldn't be hungry, period. And we shouldn't have people that don't have proper housing, that are hungry. There's certain goods and services that at baseline, public should be providing provisions for. After that, if you want to be a capitalist, if you want to be a socialist, a lot of that is jargon as far as I'm concerned anyway. But economic rights as a baseline is what we need. And I'm not being dismissive of capitalism and socialism, but we don't, none of them do we actually practice in their purest. When we bail out Wall Street, that damn sure ain't capitalism, right? That you might say that's fascism, but